Humanity discovers the Galactic Council. In the year 2157, the United Earth Federation, UEF, was a beacon of unity and progress. A century after the nations of Earth had put aside their differences to forge a global alliance, the UEF now stood as the vanguard of humanity's expansion into the stars. Leading this charge was the Galactic Exploratory Mission, GEM, a fleet of humanity's most advanced starships tasked with seeking out new life and civilizations beyond the confines of the Sol system. It was on one such mission that the UEF made first contact with an alien race known as the Zephyrians. Captain Marcus Alvarez, commander of the GM flagship UES Destiny, stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the sleek, crystalline Zephyrian ship displayed on the viewscreen. "Open a channel," he ordered, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The viewscreen shifted to show the interior of the alien vessel, where a slender, iridescent being regarded Alvarez with luminous eyes. "I am Ambassador Xyloth of the Zephyrian Republic," the alien said, its melodic voice translated seamlessly by the ship's computers. "To whom do I have the pleasure of speaking?" Alvarez introduced himself and the GEM's mission, expressing humanity's desire for peaceful cooperation and exchange of knowledge. Xyloth listened intently, its expression inscrutable. "Your words are noble, Captain Alvarez," Xyloth said at last, "but I fear they may be in vain. You see, your species has unwittingly entered the domain of the Galactic Council." Alvarez frowned. "The Galactic Council? We have never heard of such an organization." Xyloth's eyes dimmed. "The Council is an ancient body that governs the majority of the known galaxy. They maintain order by enforcing strict rules and hierarchies among the various races. And where do humanity and the Zephyrians stand in this hierarchy?" Alvarez asked, a sense of unease growing in his gut. "The Zephyrians, like many other races, are considered lesser by the Council," Xyloth explained. "We are subject to their whims and demands. And as for humanity..." The ambassador paused, as if weighing its words carefully. "The Council will see you as a threat, Captain. An upstart race that needs to be brought to heel." Alvarez digested this information, his mind racing with the implications. "What can we expect from the Council, then?" "They will demand your submission," Xyloth said grimly. "They will insist that you share your technology and resources, and that you accept a subservient role in the galactic order. And if you refuse, they'll force us to comply," Alvarez finished, his jaw clenching. Xyloth nodded. "You must understand, Captain, the Council's power is vast. They command fleets and armies beyond imagining. They have subjugated countless races throughout the eons." Alvarez met the ambassador's gaze, a fire kindling in his eyes. "With all due respect, Ambassador Xyloth, the UEF does not bow to tyrants. We will face this Council, and we will defend our right to self-determination." Xyloth's expression was a mix of admiration and sorrow. "I hope, for your sake, that your strength matches your conviction, Captain Alvarez. The road ahead will be perilous." As the communication ended and the Zephyrian ship departed, Alvarez knew that the UEF stood on the precipice of a new era. The discovery of the Galactic Council had changed everything, and humanity would need to stand united in the face of this unprecedented challenge. Turning to his crew, Alvarez issued his orders. "Set a course for Earth. We have a report to make, and a galaxy to confront. The UEF defies the Council." News of the Galactic Council's existence sent shockwaves through the United Earth Federation. In response to this revelation, the UEF convened an emergency summit at its headquarters in Geneva, drawing leaders and dignitaries from across the Sol system. Among them was Admiral Kira Shaw, a decorated veteran of the UEF fleet and a vocal advocate for human unity and autonomy. As she strode into the Grand Assembly Hall, her silver hair gleaming under the light, all eyes turned to her, seeking guidance in this uncertain time. The summit began with a recap of Captain Alvarez's encounter with the Zephyrians and the dire warnings about the Council's intentions. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled leaders as they grappled with the implications of this galactic power structure. Just as the debate began to intensify, a holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the hall. The image resolved into a towering regal figure clad in flowing robes of deep purple. "I am High Counselor Zarn of the Galactic Council," the figure announced, its voice resonating with authority. "I address the leaders of the human race." Admiral Shaw stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "I am Admiral Kira Shaw of the United Earth Federation. What is the purpose of this communication?" Zarn regarded Shaw with an air of condescension. "The Council has been monitoring your species' progress, and we have deemed it necessary to bring you into the fold of the galactic community." "And what exactly does that entail?" Shaw asked, her tone sharp. "Your species will submit to the authority of the Council," Zarn declared. "You will share your technology and resources with us, and you will accept your place in the hierarchy of the galaxy." A murmur of outrage swept through the assembly, but Shaw silenced it with a raised hand. "And if we refuse?" Zarn's eyes flashed with barely contained menace. "Then you will face the consequences of defying the Council's will. You have 1 Earth year to comply with our demands. Failure to do so will result in the forcible subjugation of your species." With that, the hologram winked out, leaving the assembly in stunned silence. Shaw turned to face her fellow leaders, her expression resolute. "The UEF does not bow to threats," she declared, her voice ringing clear. "We have fought too hard and sacrificed too much to surrender our freedom to an alien power. We will not submit to the Council's demands." A chorus of agreement rose from the assembly, and Shaw felt a surge of pride in her people's spirit. "We have 1 year to prepare," she continued. 1 year to bolster our defenses, to forge alliances, and to show the galaxy that humanity will not be cowed. As the summit concluded and the leaders dispersed to begin their preparations, Shaw knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger. The Council's threat loomed large, and the UEF would need every ounce of its strength and ingenuity to weather the coming storm. But as she gazed out at the stars, Shaw felt a flicker of hope. Humanity had always risen to the challenges before it, and she had faith that, together, they would find a way to safeguard their future and their freedom. The Council strikes first. The United Earth Federation spent the next Earth year in a flurry of activity, fortifying its defenses and seeking out potential allies among the stars. Admiral Shaw oversaw the mobilization of the UEF fleet, ensuring that every ship was armed and ready for the impending confrontation with the Galactic Council. Despite these preparations, the Council's attack still came as a shock when it finally materialized. In a coordinated strike that spanned multiple systems, Council forces descended upon UEF outposts and colonies, their sleek, angular ships tearing through human defenses like a scythe through wheat. On the bridge of the UES Bastion, Admiral Shaw watched in horror as reports of the carnage flooded in. Colony after colony fell before the onslaught, their distress calls cut short by the ruthless advance of the Council's troops. How could they mount an assault on this scale? Shaw demanded, her knuckles white, as she gripped the edge of the command console. "Our intelligence never indicated that they possessed such overwhelming force." "Their technology is far beyond anything we've encountered," replied Captain Alina Voronova, Shaw's second-in-command. "Their ships are faster, their weapons more powerful. We're outmatched in every way." Shaw gritted her teeth, a cold fury settling in her gut. "We can't let them steamroll us like this. We need to buy time, to regroup and find a way to counterattack." She turned to the communications officer. "Send a message to all UEF ships. We're falling back to the Sol system. We'll make our stand there." As the Bastion and the remnants of the UEF fleet limped back to Earth, Shaw couldn't shake the sense of dread that clung to her like a shroud. The Council had proven its power in the most devastating way possible, and now the very heart of human civilization lay exposed. In the weeks that followed, the Council's forces continued their inexorable advance, driving the UEF back system by system. Human resistance was fierce but futile, in the face of the Council's superior technology and numbers. As the invaders entered the Sol system, Shaw and the remaining UEF leaders hunkered down in a fortified bunker deep beneath the surface of Earth. The once vibrant cities above now lay in ruins, their inhabitants huddled in underground shelters as the Council's ships loomed overhead. "We can't hold out much longer," Captain Voronova said, her voice heavy with fatigue and despair. "Our fleet is in tatters, and our ground forces are being overrun. It's only a matter of time before they breach our final defenses." Shaw closed her eyes, the weight of the situation pressing down on her like a physical force. She had failed her people, failed to protect them from the Council's wrath. Now, as the end drew near, she couldn't help but wonder if surrender might have been the wiser course. But even as the thought crossed her mind, a flicker of defiance kindled in her heart. No, she resolved. Humanity would not go gentle into that good night. If this was to be their end, they would face it with courage and dignity, and they would make the Council pay dearly for every inch of ground. Rising to her feet, Shaw addressed the haggard faces around her. "We may be beaten, but we are not broken," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "We will fight to our last breath, and we will show the galaxy the indomitable spirit of the human race." A cheer rose from the assembled survivors, a last desperate cry of defiance against the encroaching darkness, and as they prepared for their final stand, Shaw couldn't help but hope that somewhere out there, an answer to their plight might yet be found. Humanity's secret weapon. As the Galactic Council's forces tightened their grip on the Sol system, a glimmer of hope emerged from an unlikely source. Deep within the bowels of a secret UEF research facility, a team of scientists had been working tirelessly on a project that could potentially turn the tide of the war. Leading this team was Dr. Eliza Novak, a brilliant physicist whose groundbreaking work on antimatter had caught the attention of Admiral Shaw herself. Now, as the Admiral and her entourage strode into the lab, Novak couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and trepidation. "Dr. Novak," Shaw greeted, her tone brisk but not unkind. "I understand you have something to show us." Novak nodded, gesturing for the group to follow her deeper into the facility. "For the past several years, my team has been developing a new weapons system based on the principles of antimatter annihilation." She led them into a cavernous hangar, where a sleek, matte black warship hung suspended in a web of scaffolding. "Behold," Novak said, her eyes gleaming with barely contained excitement, "the UES Invictus." Shaw and her companions gazed up at the ship, their expressions a mix of awe and skepticism. "What makes this ship so special?" the Admiral asked. "The Invictus is equipped with an experimental antimatter cannon," Novak explained. "By harnessing the energy released when matter and antimatter collide, we've created a weapon that can deliver unparalleled destructive force." Captain Voronova frowned. "Antimatter is notoriously unstable. How have you managed to control it?" Novak's smile was one of quiet triumph. "We've developed a containment system that uses advanced magnetic fields to keep the antimatter in check. The cannon itself is designed to fire focused beams of antimatter particles, which will annihilate any matter they come into contact with." Shaw studied the ship, her mind racing with the possibilities. "How soon can the Invictus be ready for combat?" "We're in the final stages of testing," Novak replied. "With a concerted effort, we could have her operational within a matter of weeks." Shaw nodded, her decision made. "Make it happen, Dr. Novak. The Invictus may be our last hope for turning the tide against the Council." As the scientists set to work preparing the ship for its maiden voyage, Shaw pulled Captain Voronova aside. "I want you to assemble a crew for the Invictus," she said. "Handpick the best and brightest from what's left of our forces." Voronova nodded, understanding the gravity of the task. "And who will command the ship?" Shaw's gaze was steady. "I will. This is our best chance to strike back at the Council, and I intend to lead from the front." In the weeks that followed, the Invictus underwent a flurry of final preparations. Its crew, a mix of battle-hardened veterans and brilliant young officers, trained relentlessly to master the ship's cutting-edge systems. And then, on a clear, cold morning, the Invictus emerged from its hangar, its sleek lines gleaming in the pale sunlight. As Admiral Shaw took her place on the bridge, she felt a surge of hope and determination. The Council had brought humanity to the brink of extinction, but with the Invictus at their disposal, the UEF finally had a chance to fight back, and Shaw intended to make the most of it. "Set a course for the Gliese system," she ordered, her voice ringing with authority. "It's time to show the Council what humanity is truly capable of." The Battle of Gliese. The UEA's Invictus emerged from slip space on the fringes of the Gliese system, its matte black hull blending seamlessly with the void. On the bridge, Admiral Shaw surveyed the starfield before her, a sense of grim determination settling over her like a mantle. "Status report," she barked, her eyes never leaving the view screen. "All systems nominal," replied Lieutenant Mikhail Petrov, the ship's chief engineer. "Antimatter containment is stable, and the cannon is primed and ready." Shaw nodded, a flicker of satisfaction crossing her face. "And our escort?" "The rest of the fleet is holding position just outside the system," answered Captain Voronova. "They're ready to jump in on your command." "Good," Shaw said, her gaze hardening. "It's time to set the trap." With a nod to the communications officer, Shaw opened a channel to the waiting UEF fleet. "This is Admiral Shaw aboard the Invictus. Commence Operation Firestorm." Across the void, a dozen UEF ships leaped into slip space, their trajectories carefully plotted to draw the attention of the Council's forces. As they emerged in the heart of the Gliese system, they immediately engaged the enemy, their weapons flaring in the darkness. On the bridge of the Invictus, the crew watched the unfolding battle with bated breath. The UEF ships were hopelessly outmatched, their shields and hulls buckling under the onslaught of the Council's superior technology. But even as they fell, one by one, the UEF ships served their purpose. The Council's fleet, drawn by the commotion, began to converge on the besieged vessels, leaving their flanks exposed. "They're taking the bait," Voronova murmured, her eyes glued to the tactical display. Shaw's lips curled in a grim smile. "Helm, bring us about. Let's hit them where it hurts." With a surge of power, the Invictus leaped forward, its engines flaring as it closed in on the Council's fleet. The enemy ships, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the UEF's secret weapon, scrambled to reorient themselves. But it was too late. With a blinding flash, the Invictus antimatter cannon roared to life, sending a searing beam of annihilating energy into the heart of the Council's formation. Ships vanished in the blink of an eye, their hulls disintegrating as the antimatter tore them apart at the molecular level. The Council's fleet reeled, their once impenetrable lines shattering under the onslaught. The Invictus pressed its advantage, its cannon firing again and again, each shot claiming more of the enemy's numbers. On the bridge, Shaw watched the carnage unfold with a mix of elation and grim satisfaction. The Invictus was performing beyond her wildest dreams, its antimatter cannon proving to be the equalizer she had hoped for. But even as the tide of battle turned in the UEF's favor, Shaw knew that the fight was far from over. The Council's fleet, though battered and bloodied, was still a formidable force, and they would not surrender easily. "Incoming fire," Petrov shouted, his voice tight with tension. "Shields at 50% and falling." Shaw gritted her teeth as the Invictus shuddered under the impact of the Council's weapons. "Divert power to the shields," she ordered, "and keep that cannon firing." The battle raged on, the two fleets locked in a deadly dance of destruction. The Invictus, for all its power, was still just one ship, and the Council's forces seemed determined to overwhelm it through sheer numbers. But the UEF had one final trick up its sleeve. As the Invictus shields began to falter, a new wave of UEF ships emerged from slip space, their hulls bristling with the same antimatter technology that had turned the tide of the battle. The Council's fleet, already reeling from the Invictus assault, found itself outflanked and outgunned. The UEF ships tore into them with ruthless efficiency, their antimatter cannons leaving nothing but drifting wreckage in their wake. And at the heart of it all, the Invictus fought on, its crew pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion as they poured every ounce of their skill and determination into the battle. In the end, it was the Council's fleet that broke first. Faced with the prospect of total annihilation, the surviving ships turned tail and fled, vanishing into the depths of space. On the bridge of the Invictus, a cheer went up as the realization of their victory sank in. Shaw, her face streaked with sweat and grime, allowed herself a moment of triumph. "We did it," she murmured, her voice hoarse with emotion. "We showed them what humanity is capable of." But even as the celebration swept through the UEF fleet, Shaw knew that this was only the beginning. The Council, though defeated here, would not take this humiliation lightly. They would regroup, they would adapt, and they would come at humanity with renewed fury. But for now, in this moment of hard-won victory, Shaw allowed herself to hope. The road ahead would be long and perilous, but with the Invictus and the indomitable spirit of humanity at her side, she knew that anything was possible. The Battle of Gliese would go down in history as a turning point, the moment when the tide of the war began to shift in humanity's favor, and the UEF, armed with its new secret weapon and a newfound sense of purpose, would press on, determined to see this fight through to the end. A new era dawns. In the wake of the Battle of Gliese, the United Earth Federation found itself reinvigorated, its forces imbued with a newfound sense of hope and determination. The victory, hard-won though it had been, had proven that the Council was not invincible, that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest power and emerge triumphant. Seizing upon this momentum, Admiral Shaw and the UEF leadership launched a series of daring counterattacks, striking at key Council strongholds and supply lines. The Invictus and its sister ships, their antimatter cannons blazing, spearheaded these assaults, sowing chaos and destruction in their wake. The Council, reeling from the sudden shift in the war's tide, fought back with increasing desperation. But as the UEF's victories mounted, cracks began to appear in the monolithic facade of the galactic power structure. Emboldened by humanity's successes, other subjugated races began to rise up against their Council overlords. The Zephyrians, the first to warn humanity of the Council's tyranny, were among the first to join the UEF's cause, their crystalline ships taking their place alongside human vessels in the heat of battle. As the rebellion spread, the Council found itself stretched thin, its once mighty fleets scattered and beleaguered. And with each liberated system, each freed civilization, the UEF's strength and resolve only grew. At the forefront of this new era of galactic upheaval stood Admiral Shaw, her leadership and tactical brilliance guiding the UEF from victory to victory. And always at her side was the Invictus, the symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit and unyielding determination. But even as the UEF pushed the Council back, driving them from human space and beyond, Shaw knew that the final confrontation was yet to come. The Council, in a last desperate gambit, had withdrawn to their capital system, fortifying it with every resource and technology at their disposal. The ensuing battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The full might of the Council, arrayed against the combined strength of the UEF and its allies. Fleets clashed in the void, their weapons setting the very fabric of space ablaze. Planets trembled and stars shuddered as the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. And at the center of it all, the Invictus and its crew fought with a fury and determination that would be remembered for generations. Its antimatter cannon, pushed to the very limits of its capabilities, carved great swaths of destruction through the Council's defenses, even as the ship itself weathered blow after punishing blow. In the end, it was the Council that blinked first, faced with the prospect of total defeat and the collapse of their millennia-old power structure. They at last sued for peace. The negotiations that followed were tense and fraught, but Admiral Shaw, ever the diplomat as well as the warrior, navigated them with a deft touch. In the end, a new galactic order began to take shape, one founded upon the principles of cooperation, autonomy, and mutual respect. The Council, its power greatly diminished, would no longer be the sole arbiter of the galaxy's fate. In its place, a new alliance rose, a partnership of equals in which humanity and the races it had helped to liberate would stand side by side. As the ink dried on the treaties and the guns at last fell silent, Admiral Shaw stood on the bridge of the Invictus, gazing out at the stars. The scars of the war still lingered, both on the ship and on the galaxy itself. But a new dawn was breaking. Humanity had proven itself, not just as a survivor, but as a leader and a force for change. And as Shaw looked to the future, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, the spirit and determination that had carried them through this crucible would see them through. A new era had dawned, and the United Earth Federation would be at the forefront, guiding the galaxy towards a brighter, more hopeful tomorrow.